Hey, what's going on, you guys? Mr. Money1235 here, back yet again for another album review. Timbre, Hot Dreams. Now, I had heard a little bit about these guys before this album. I actually listened to a few cuts of Creep On Creepin' On, their last album, and I really thought the singer had a really unique voice, and I loved that about it the most. And I really enjoyed kind of the creepy, kind of dark imagery that went into the music some, and the lyrics. But nothing got me more hyped to listen to this album until I heard the song Hot Dreams. The lead single from this album is the sexiest, coolest down tune, has the coolest imagery of like old pink neon lights and stuff like that. Kind of the same imagery of the movie Only God Forgives. That's kind of the vibe that this song kind of sends out to me, and the music video captures that imagery perfectly with its strip club scene. There's titties in it, so definitely go check it out. So after I heard the lead single from around the beginning of this year, I just got so hyped to listen to this album, and combined with the really deep voice that this guy has, a really unique deep voice and the sound they were going for, I was expecting kind of an album that follows in the same style as the single. Something a little bit more vintage, something that reminds you of old 1950s and 60s flicks. And honestly, when I first listened to this thing, I was so disappointed. I absolutely hated this album. This seriously became, to me, when I first heard it, one of those albums that was like, some of the songs are okay, but not really. The lead single is easily the best song on this album. Type album, and there's been a few that I've heard recently that I would say the exact same thing about. But for some reason, a little itch came up on my back that just kept making me re-listen to this thing over and over again. And I gotta say, it grew on me a little bit. Now, I still don't think this thing is perfect, and I'm still a little bit disappointed that I didn't quite get the sound I was looking for. But there are still some huge highlights on this album, and tracks that I'm still going to be listening to a whole lot from this record. Hell, I've even already bought a copy of it, so that just shows you the tiny little addiction that I'm having with this album right now. The first track on this album, Beat the Drum Slowly, is a really creepy, really, like acoustic guitar, some keyboard parts in the background, really creepy, eerie song. Combined with those deep vocals, it kind of gives off this really like B-movie 1960s horror movie type vibe. Actually, a whole lot of the tracks on this album do, especially the two instrumentals that are found on this thing. But this track is just really deep, and along with that deep voice, like I said, we beat the drums slowly. I hated this track at first, but now it's became one of my favorites on the album. And then the second track is Hot Dreams, easily my favorite song on this album. I've already talked about this in great detail, but you should definitely listen to this song and check out the music video if you don't listen to anything else from this record, for sure. The next track, Curtains, I find to be a little bit of a forgettable track, honestly, because there's a few tracks on this album that kind of already sound like this one, chord progression-wise, I guess. But still, I really like that this track is on here. It's not one of my favorites on the album, but it's definitely listenable, and there's nothing really bad that I can say about it. It's just that it sounds similar to other things, and it's just not a very memorable track. But the next track on this album, for sure, is my second favorite on this album, Bring Me Simple Men. I absolutely love the Quentin Tarantino-esque guitars on this track, the really epic feel, the really memorable chorus. Definitely a huge highlight from this album for me, and a track that I'm going to be listening to for a long time. I absolutely love this song. It's really cool. Like I said, check this song out and tell me that it doesn't sound like something Quentin Tarantino would use in one of his movies, because it reminds me so much of that. I keep thinking about like Pulp Fiction and Django Unchained when I hear this song. So that's really cool. And then the next song in this album, Resurrection Drive Part 2. Really creepy instrumental piece with like this really creepy piano part, or keyboard part I should say, where like it hits the notes and then the note gets like kind of distorted a little bit. It's like I mentioned before, it kind of gives you that old-timey horror movie type vibe, like a horror movie that was made back in the 60s or something. It kind of gives off that vibe. And not to mention, it's another one of my favorite tracks on this album. For an instrumental piece, it really kept me engaged. I really like the sounds that I was getting on this track, and I can't really explain to you why. I just really like it. The next song, Grand Canyon, is actually really good too. There's a really cool moment near the end of the track where like the saxophone comes back in and it's just like a really cacophonous amount of noise there, along with the really cool string sections. This is actually a really cool song. Another one of my favorites on this album, actually. The next two tracks are definitely bummers for me. This Locomotion has a really memorable chorus, and I really enjoy how the guitar sounds kind of bluesy during the verses of this track, but honestly I just don't think it's that memorable, really. It doesn't have a whole lot of standing power, I think. And I feel the same way especially about the next song on this album, The New Tomorrow. It's definitely my least favorite song on the album, but the next track brings it all the way back up again with the song Run From Me. It is this creepy ass song. It sounds like he's going to kill this woman. That's what the lyrics are talking about anyway. It has this really somber, nothing but piano at this really beginning part. Run from me, darling. And then it just builds up and all these instruments come in near the end of the track that just... It's just like, oh my god. Once again, another really eerie track on this album, and another one of my favorites, honestly. And then this album ends on another instrumental called The Three Sisters, which I also really enjoy. So as you can tell, after listening to this album for the first time and not really enjoying it, after coming back to it a few times, I'm only having a problem with really one track on this thing. The rest of them I just think are either really, really good or just, you know, better than others. While I can't give this my full recommendation, I still suggest that you check it out, and especially check out the lead single. I would also like you to check out the song Bring Me Simple Men, because that one's really cool too. Anyway, I think we're back in the swing of things again, so I'm going to go ahead and review a little pop album for you guys next. Mr. Bunny 1, 2, 3, 5. I'll see you guys later. Something everybody knows!